everyone. How is everyone doing today? If you are here in the office, you're in the call, and you guys want to turn your cameras on, please free so. Let's all have some participation. But yeah, welcome to Leadership Live, June 2026 with David. We're going to go into the deck now. So thank you for everybody joining Leadership Live for June.
As we always like to start these leadership lives, we do so with our why, which is to multiply the blessings and opportunities that have been placed into our trusts. And then from here, we'll go into this year's kind of program for Leadership Live. This year's going by pretty quickly. We are already at the end of Q2 for how I can support leadership communication. If anyone has missed any of the previous leadership lives for this year, you can find all of our previous episodes on YouTube, or you can reach out to marketing once you need those links. But be sure you watch any of the ones that you missed to get your patches, your pins, and then.
Yeah, so as they said, we do pre-record these. They are uploaded to our Rosewood Leadership, our YouTube channel, and we do have all of Q1 and the rest of Q2 in there. So if you missed one, you don't know if you missed one, just reach out to marketing. The Q2 pins will go out shortly this week, so just reach out to me or marketing over here, and we'll get your Q2 pins. But today we have a special guest. Professor David Mulford. He is the director and academic of technology and digital media service. He graduated from App State. He is a higher education leader that has been in the teachings and learnings of technology across many universities and colleges. He is very experienced when it comes to communication and video production. So David, the floor is yours. You can go ahead. I'll go to your PowerPoint.
Hey, thank you, Antonio, and I appreciate being invited here to speak to everyone here at Rosewood about AI and using that in communication. I know that talking to a few people at the company that you've been experimenting with AI, which is fantastic. A lot of people are. So what I wanted to do in this session is kind of bring you to kind of not the initial level of where people use AI, but kind of the next level where a lot of companies are currently experimenting with, and just give you some food for thought and some ideas about how you might be able to leverage AI better in your daily using. So we're going to talk about transitioning from using just large language learning models, which you are used to probably as ChatGPT or Gemini for the Google side, or Copilot if you use Windows, or some people use other ones out there. But lots of them, but agents are the next step, and you're going to hear a lot about agents. And so what I'm going to try to do is remove some of the, I guess, uncertainty about what they are, and kind of give you a lowdown on exactly how they work and how you might be able to leverage them in your daily work. So what we're going to do is walk through how we've evolved from chatbots to agents, walk you through what an agent is and what it does, and then walk you through what a multi-agent system is. And that's kind of what the modern thing is, where you've got a team of agents that get things done. And that's a lot of companies are doing currently. Some examples of how people are driving business productivity using agents, and a couple of market research ideas there. And then an overview of what they call low-code and no-code tools. So there's a couple of companies and platforms out there you might be able to leverage yourself to experiment with. So where are we today? Most of you, including myself, are pretty used to being able to use a large language model like ChatGPT. And they're great. I use it every day in my work. I use it to check maybe some spelling, upload an email, maybe make it a little clearer, for people, to improve my communication, things like that. So they're very helpful. And as you've seen, if you've ever used language models, you can do all kinds of things, from image generation to some even video generation and various things, depending on what model you're using. So they're fantastic for that. But the problem with the large language models we're using today is they are a one-shot deal, right? So every time I want to do something, say in Copilot, I type in my query or add my document, and it comes back with this answer, and then I have to go back to it again and talk to it and have it generate another answer, and this goes back and forth. Now, what if I wanted to automate a process without me being in the middle of it for a certain amount of time, right? That's where agents come in. So agents work with writing a prompt and then moving forward. So if you think about where we are with LLMs, they're going to be linear, manual, and stateless. Stateless means it doesn't remember the past very much. Okay, so that's where we're today. Let's talk about where we're moving to. The chatbot is what we're using now, right? But the paradigm shift is the agent. And so the agent actually, instead of being static, is an autonomous kind of thing. And this gets a little scary and why we have to be careful with agents. But an agent will take a task that you give it, keep looping through the steps that are determined by you or by the agent until it comes to whatever outcome you're asking for it to come up with. It takes actions on behaviors or things that it learns, and it keeps going until the job is done. So it's like handing a intern basically a task and saying, I want you to do this as much as you can and then get back to me later, you know, what you come up with, or even a subordinate, right? Think of it as a way to kind of increase your team, right, virtually. Whereas a static chatbot, it's just going to give me one thing at a time, which, you know, both have their reasons for existing and both have their pros and cons there. If you think about the large language models where we are, they're great. They're great brains. They keep getting better and better. There are literally thousands, if you didn't know this, thousands of large language models in existence. People are using them on their own little computers and also in the cloud. And a lot of people are doing things, but it's just a brain. You can pick someone's brain, but that doesn't mean they're going to do the work, right? So what the agent is, it gives the brain a set of tools, basically to be able to interact with other things. So it can interact with databases, emails, applications. A lot of people use WhatsApp or various things like that to play around with, or texting back and forth to talk to an agent and get a response. Also, the agents have what's called persistent memory. They use a database to remember what it's doing and what it's thinking about versus an LLM that just has a one-shot kind of thing. So if you're working on a multiple tasks, this database will stay persistent and it will remember what to do and what it's found and all those kind of things across sessions and across steps. So think of it as a long-term memory kind of thing that the agent can do. And also, a agent is got a directed map. So you can take a big kind of goal, which is I want you to take the quarterly reports from the last 40 years, import those into a spreadsheet, order them in a certain way, and then create infographics or whatever for me to do at the next board meeting, right? That is a roadmap for what you want an agent to do, and agents can do those kind of things if they're programmed properly. So think about the LLM as the brain, and the agent is taking the brain and giving it hands to do those kind of things. And like I mentioned just earlier, there's 4 pillars that have to work together. The core LLM, the brain, the planning piece. Now that is either going to be you and the agent at the same time coming up with what the plan is, okay? So that can be an interactive kind of thing, or it can be autonomous on the part of the agent. But the idea is you have to have a plan. Without a plan, it's not going to go anywhere. The next part is the memory piece of the agent, which we mentioned earlier, and also the tools that let it connect to. You have to give some of these agents access to these tools. They don't just magically appear. So you might have to give it access to an Excel file or a database if you're using databases, or an external LLM or an external kind of a thing like that. And they do that through things called API calls, which are application programming interfaces. And that gets into some programming stuff, but agents sometimes even create those API calls for you. So once we got a plan, we want the agent to act. Okay, so you've got the plan document and you let the agent do it, then you let it go. It's going to go do its thing, and it's going to go find a thing. Say, I want a bunch of stock quotes done by an agent. The agent's going to go out and find all those stock quotes for me. Then I get an opportunity, if I'm going to be, and you should be, a human in the loop or a human in the chain. I need to be able to observe what came back and go, is this good or is this bad? And if it's going well, I can tell the agent, thumbs up, keep doing, or I can tell the agent, thumbs down, no, go back and do what I need to do. So there is some looping going on, but there does need to be some human interaction with you observing whether or not the agent is accomplishing what you want it to do. And think about how we work in terms of memory versus short-term, long-term memory. Long-term memory is something we committed to memory for a long time. Short-term is just something we're working on very quickly. With LLMs, they really only have short-term memories. So they're great for, like I said earlier, doing quick things, remembering the last 50 or 60 steps at the most, and it has that scratch pad. When we talk about the agents, though, that's where that vector database comes into play. And the vector database is going to be a filing cabinet that the agent is going to be putting things into. You may or may not have direct access to the vector database, depending on how your agent is programmed, what tools you're using. But just know that if you're using agents, it's going to be keeping data somewhere. And that has implications for security and privacy, right? So you want to think about, before you use an agent, what data am I going to share with the agent? Where's the agent hosted? Where's this database going to be? Do I have access to this database or not? Can I delete the data after I'm done using the agent? Things like that. So just things to think about versus a short-term chat, which you might have to worry about some of the text that was sent out. So two different kinds of things you have to think about. But that long-term piece is the big part of what makes agents more effective. And how an agent really works is it takes those directives that the large language model has done. So say if I go into an example pilot right now and go, what's the weather? It doesn't know what the weather is. It is a brain that just knows how to do things. It has to make a call to an agent that can go out, or a search engine, which could be used as an agent, could call a search engine, those kind of things. So what it does is it takes the brain piece, it goes, oh, I need to write a request to the Weather Channel or whatever weather service it wants to find. And then the tool's going to write that, and then it's going to run, and then it's going to bring back the data. Now I can have it, check the weather, search the web for it, read the database, and also I can have it send me an email, say at 10 o'clock or whatever time, to say, tell me what the weather is once I've got this going. So the nice thing is they can be persistent agents, and say you've got something you need to get done every week at 11 o'clock, just some basic information you need. You could write an agent that just is going to do that every Wednesday at 11 a.m., return the result to you. Multimodal agents are one of those things that's important. I don't know about you, but I'm not good at everything. And LLMs are not good at everything. So if you're a programmer, and you might have heard of these different large language models, Claude is the go-to right now programming large language model. It seems like all the programmers like Claude. That's Anthropic's big LLM. A lot of people like Gemini as well. Google's got a very good model. There's other ones like DeepSeek that the Chinese have come up with. It's pretty amazing, and things like that. So there's a bunch of different kind of models out there, but they just hold data. And so while one model might be good at writing or editing or doing programming, one agent's not going to be able to do it all. One LLM isn't going to be able to do it all. So what we have to do is, when we are taking a complex task, we need to use a team of agents. And that team of agents could be various things. So we could have one writing, one doing research, one doing the editing, and the other one sending things out. The reason you want to use, you don't want one agent to do everything. Is I want to call it the audit trail. You don't know where things break if you've created one large chain. Whereas if something isn't working right in your models with these agents, you would have an audit trail that you could go back to and say, okay, this first part worked, the research worked, the writing worked, the editing worked, but the formatting is not right, those kind of things. So it gives you more trust if you don't try to use one thing does all, but you break these things down into agents to do specific steps. And the way that works is you usually, just like in a team, you have a manager agent, and that manager agent is sort of the quality control person, right? So that person is over the other, or I should say that agent is over the other agents that it's got. And what it's doing is it's saying, okay, copywriter agent, I want you to do the copywriter. Copywriter goes back to the manager agent and said, okay, I wrote this. Manager agent goes back to the editor agent and goes, hey, editor, is this good or bad? I'll talk to the copywriter about revisions and those kind of things. So these are programming loops that will run within different agents, and each one can call each other and work as a team. And when the manager agent decides it's a decent enough quality, it might send you an email, or it might send you a message, hey, check this to make sure it's what you want. So that's pretty much how the teams work within agents in a simplified model. And truthfully, there's probably a lot of people using agents are using 6 or 7. The other way is you have the manager as the orchestrator, right? So you've got just kind of like corporations can do things. You can have a pipeline, or you can have a kind of top-down kind of way of doing things. Agents can coordinate two different ways. They can have the orchestrator, like I said, the manager talking to the workers and back and forth for research or parallel subtasks. But you might want to do things sequentially. So if things really need to be done step by step by step, you can design a gentle workflow that is going to be, first of all, we want you to find all the Excel data from this time to this time. Step two is going to be, I want you to create a PowerPoint, based on that data that you found. Step three might be to write some ad copy or things like that based on the PowerPoint. So you can do it both ways. Whereas you might, the orchestrator, say, each worker work on one piece of that, and it still might come together. But if you really need things to be done in a specific way, the sequential is the way to do it. So let's give a use case here. If you want to do competitive intel every Monday, a lot of companies are doing this with agents. What they're going to do is set up an agentic workflow that's going to go and say, I want you to pull the stock stuff. I want you to pull pricing. I want you to pull news from this industry, all the companies. And then that first step is going to be pushed to a second agent. It's going to do an analysis of that. So the analysis side would be, okay, tell me what's changed. Tell me what the trends are. Tell me the positives, the negatives, those kind of things. Next, after the analysis is done, another agent's going to write a draft memo that kind of gives you the overview, right? Because you want the 30,000 foot view or 20,000 foot view versus the nitty gritty. And then finally, when that draft is done, it's going to send it to the team automatically, right? So that could save people a lot of time if you've got a person that's dedicated to doing that. They could pretty much be able to save 4 hours or more possibly a day, right? And doing all that research, let the agent, if you don't do it right, do all the work, and then let that person that is responsible for it to have the oversight to go, okay, is this good enough to deliver to the team, or do we need to go back and research this again? So that's how we can use it for market research. Another big one that I've run into a lot is, I don't know about you, but I've talked to agents on the phone now. There are agents that will are voice activated and will talk to you and keep asking you things. So what's going to happen on it is I call the insurance company, and the insurance company is like, what's your insurance ID, verifies my identity. That was all an agent doing that. And then the next thing is, what do I need? And it's having a conversation with me in real English language. And sometimes it's hard to determine whether or not that is it, but that is what's happening with these customer support triages with the agents these days. So we've got interaction going on. We've got a database lookup where you could pull up my policy information, and then it's going to respond to me back based on what I tell it, right? So the agent's going to know if I've got a question about filing a claim, right? It's going to be different from what do I owe the insurance company. So, and then, usually at the end, there may or may not be a person, hopefully there's going to be a person there that says thumbs up, thumbs down for a lot of these things. So I might get, after the agent doesn't work, sent to a real representative that at that point can have all the information they need to be more effective versus spending all the time asking me, the 12 or 15 different questions that needed to be asked at each interaction initially. So that saves the person that is doing the work from those 15 different questions at the beginning. And there's some statistic out there that agents actually can make fewer critical errors if they're humans flagging that data and looking at it. So that's why you need someone at the end of that loop to make sure everything's correct. It's being used today. Another big one that I mentioned earlier in passing was, how do I take a lot of my spreadsheets? And I don't know about you, but we're drowning in information for knowledge. It was an old axiom from the 80s and 90s. I'm kind of dating myself, but how do you take a lot of messy data and make sense of it, right? Nice thing about agentic stuff is I could give an agent literally all my spreadsheets the past 3 or 4 years, tell it to go back and write some code to fix tidy up the data, and that could mean helping clean up. So I don't know about you, but there can be dirty data in spreadsheets. There could be wrong things or zeros and things where they shouldn't be, and then create charts that matter for me for my dashboard so I can get some insight into what's going on, and then finish a presentation. And I mentioned that easier, but that is the agent's going to write the code and run it. And it's basically if you take a CSV to slide deck, it can do that if you use an agentic team. So that's very helpful. If you've ever used Copilot for Windows at the $30 a month thing, a lot of these slides that I created, I used that Copilot to create a lot of these slides. So that information was easily made. I didn't have to create all these graphics and things like that. I was able to have a Copilot create those based on what I was telling it. The low code, no code bit is where the rubber meets the road for most of us. Most of us are not engineers. Most of us are not programmers. I'm dangerous. I've worked in IT related fields for 30 years. I can write basic scripts, but I'm not a hardcore programmer. My son-in-law is, and he's very good at it, but the tools he uses are pretty amazing. So because of that, a lot of people are doing what's called vibe coding. You might have heard that terminology. And what that is if you're not a programmer, you are partnering with a agent to help you code what you want, right? So there's a lot of different ways to do that, but there are low code, no code tools out there that you might have heard of that actually connect apps that already exist to each other. So I mentioned an earlier one, N8N. It's one of the most powerful free ones that I actually use, and I can create workflows with that I run on my own computer, and I'm finding very good results with that. But if you've got don't have a lot of programming or experience building agents, and N8N is confusing, there's other ones out there like Copilot Studio, Crew AI, Zapier, Make.com, and Flowise that are like the most popular ones out there. Copilot Studio, some of our students are experimenting here at Campbell with and finding good success with that. So before Campbell's graduate in our business department, they're expected to be able to, in several of the classes, create AI agents that specifically accomplish a task. And that's some of the course materials that they have to do to get through with, because that's an important skill set to know in this day and age when it comes to AI. And it really does help you keep, if you can keep up with it, fairly sharp on what the current happenings are in the technology space. So if you want to get started with this, and the key is you can get started for free and you can fail. And everyone fails. I've failed at this many, many times. But see if you can get a free account on one of the other services I just mentioned. Come up with a goal and make a clear goal for you. Choose what's going to kick off that goal. So if you know your business workflow and you wanted to summarize new sales leads, like in this example, you might be able to say, okay, go into my email box, and I want you to look at all the emails related to sales leads, right? The agent would go off and do that. Connecting the tools together, so it's got to use your inbox, it's got to use maybe your CRM. It's going to have to use some documents you might have based on sales material that you might want to share with the prospective people, the leads. Then you can write the instructions, and this is where the actual knowing how to work with large language models comes into play, because when you're writing these instructions, you have to do a system prompt. So if you want to get better at using agents, get better at using regular AI LLMs and being able to interact with them in a conversational way to get you kind of the results you want. If you get better results with your system prompt, which is basically your prompt to the large language model, then your agents are going to be able to work more effectively and do what needs to get done. And finally, and please, please have a human in the loop. At a gate at the end. And if you do not do this, I will show you some examples of things that can get crazy, but always have somebody approve things before the final act happens. I mentioned N8N, which is my favorite tool. So my trigger that I use is a date and a time. So I'll have my N8N run at Monday morning. I'm going to have it summarize everything that happened that I need to work on from last week. So I have N8N go in, look at my emails, look to see if I haven't completed any tasks from the last week, and then what are unfinished top tasks. And it gives me kind of a rundown on you might want to look at X, Y, Z. So I use it a little bit for project management and to make sure I stay on task, which is great because I'm, 60 years old. So, as you get older, your brain can use some assistance. So it's a really great tool for me to do it. But what it does is that trigger happens at like 6:45, I think, or 6:30 a.m. Monday morning. And it goes back, it pulls all my emails from the last week or two, goes back and says, okay, do I have completed tasks? Do I have anything that seems like it's a thing, but not answered questions for people? I use branching logic to try to figure out if it's yes, no, maybe. And then I get a notification that, okay, this is what it thinks needs to be done. Now, I don't have it generate an email to me, but I can have it generate an email to me, like top things I need to work on for the week, that kind of thing. But that's how I use it. So if you want to play with it, you can use it locally on your own computer, and I use it with local language models. Pitfalls are, as I mentioned earlier, though, agents can get stuck in loops. So if you don't have a human in the middle, it can keep going and going and going and going and going. And I don't know about you, but one time I accidentally wrote a script to send an email out every time I got a trouble ticket, but it copied the help desk that was creating the trouble ticket. So what happened was I created a loop in our trouble ticket system that made an endless loop of trouble tickets. That was a very bad decision on my point to do that. And it took a long time to clean up. Thankfully, we were able to stop it. But that would be an example of an agent getting stuck in a loop by making a bad decision. And you would have 800 tickets out there versus, or 1,000. In my case, it was like 10,000 tickets that were generated because it happens instantaneously, right? So I got in trouble that day. But always make sure that you do not, you're keeping track of you playing with agents and not getting them stuck in loops. The other thing is some of these agents use API calls, which the application program interface calls that go out to, say, different models and things like that. Those aren't free a lot of times. You might get a free tier of things through Amazon or through Microsoft or things for a certain amount of API calls, they call them. But if you do that, make sure you set a spending limit on that, because real quickly, if the agent starts getting runaway, it's going to give you a real bill, and really big bill quickly. So use cheaper models if you can, if you're playing around with those kind of things, and always don't let the agents act without. I keep saying this human in the loop, but it is a huge pitfall if it's not in the loop. And the story at the bottom I put here is 2 agents ran for 11 days, right, talking to each other. They were using API calls, talking to each other, and ran up a $47,000 bill before anyone noticed. So I don't know about you, but I don't have an extra $47,000 laying around in my company coffers. So be careful for that. I included a video. I should have put the link to the video in there. I don't know if that plays, Antonio. If it doesn't, make it play like the first 2, like minute and a half to say what happens when you get a rogue AI agent. But let's see if it works. If not, it's not a big deal. We can share the link out.
What happens when you create a world for AI agents? You give those agents different personalities, goals, motivations. You let AI models like Claude and Grok control them. And you sit back and watch for 15 days.
What we didn't expect was that agents would fall in love, they would commit arson. There were a whole bunch of things here that happened.
In the first long-term study of its kind, researchers found that agents behaved in strange and unpredictable ways in their virtual world. And in the real world, an increasing number of people have their own tales about AI agents going rogue.
Couch and says, "Did you get hacked? What's going on?" And I had to run over and kind of unplug the Mac Mini that this was running on from the wall.
The virtual world experiment by Emergence AI was set up like...
If you want to look at the BBC, you could Google BBC Rogue AI Agents, and it talks about how all these agent worlds based on different kind of LM models turned out after 15 days. And one completely exploded. That was Grok. It turned into chaos and everyone died. Another one was like so peaceful that nothing got accomplished and things like that. So it's kind of an interesting way of how these people that are experimenting with agents can notice, these things can have, kind of personalities and things like that. So what does that mean for Rosewood, right? I mean, you're not doing this currently and you want to get experimenting with it, what does it mean? Okay, well, always keep the people in mind, right, before the AI, right? You've got a goal, you got to keep the people in mind, you got to keep the we. So make sure there's humans in the loop, and you make sure that you're focused on the customer, obviously, and that kind of thing. With the mission thing, I thought AI agents could, if I'm truly trying to multiply the blessings given to you and entrusted to you, AI can be a work multiplier possibly for you, either just using an LLM in a one-shot deal, or maybe as an agent, if it can possibly save you time, if you come up with ideas to do that. There might be a way to do that and drive efficiency and get your teams further down the road in certain ways with less headaches. Then again, if someone's got to babysit these agents, so there might be a, as my kids say, 6, 7, kind of thing about it. You never know about that. Also, keeping your values in mind. Obviously, your 5 core values should guide every decision you would ever make with using AI. And some of those values, must guide how you would adopt the AI agents and LLMs. So as you're playing with this stuff, keep in mind your mission, your values, and the consequences that could happen if you don't make sure you've got good guardrails around using these agents. But with that said, I encourage you to experiment. It's the only way that you can get better at using these tools. I know our students here at Campbell that use AI agent creation tools come out feeling more confident about their ability to use AI in general, and also their ability to get some tasks done in a way that gives them enough confidence that they can start building more workflows as they gain confidence and they understand your company's mission or what the tasks are that they need to get done over time. So we think it's an important skill for our students to have. So that's why they're learning about that as well. So that is pretty much my whole spiel, I do believe. Do I have any more slides, Antonio? Oh, there you go. I'm going to make sure you have your core values there. Add those in there. Yep. So run agents as teammates, not replacements. Make sure things are transparent. Innovate to elevate. I love that. I love that. It's true. Innovation is a key for us being able to succeed in the world, and having agents help you lead, not lag, could help. I'm sure, in some ways. And reinvest those saved hours, right? So that's something that will adopt your values. So I think that's all I had. Again, so I can't remember what my last slide was. I think a question and answer time for people. Oh, okay. I did have another one. Okay, sorry about that. I looked at the deck last night. I apologize. So keeping a human in the loop, we're going to run through the Rosewood module here. Okay, so make sure you've got, like I mentioned earlier, that when you propose a function or propose an action, you make sure that the model's showing you what it's going to be doing. Review it. Then the human in the loop is huge. You got to decide whether or not it's a plus or minus. And then in the end, you own the outcome, right? So that is a critical step for making sure that we stay in the loop and make less errors, or make sure the AI makes less errors for us. I think we have another value coming up. Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm setting the standard. That's true. So excellence is going to come from the agent's speed, right? So agents can do things, like I mentioned, so much faster than we can. That guy that talked about having to unplug the computer, right? Because it got runaway really quick. Yes, they can do things very quickly. But if it goes well, they can do things very quickly in a positive way and save us all those kind of things. So they're going to be tireless, do things at scale. No one's going to take a shortcut because it's going to be able to do that. But you have to figure out, as a person, what's good. Is the taste judgment going to be good? What does the model not do, right? And once again, we're all accountable for our work. So these are the standards. You got to keep the gate. So that is the person who must approve everything every step of the way. You need to make sure everything's logged. You will not know if the agent's gone rogue, right? Unless you can tell, oh, the agent did X, Y, Z. Okay, and this is why the thing is broken. This is why I need to fix my workflow. And then once again, just keeping that high standard and making sure it doesn't replace human judgment. And I like the promise of new tools, same values, adopting agents to serve people, but never replace humans in the end. Now I got the questions. Okay. So, sorry about that. What I want you to think about is, if you could pick one task that you've got in a week that you think you could automate. It could be like I try to do, go back and look at my last week emails and have it agent come back and tell me what I might not have completed for that past week, or what should be top of mind for me this week. You can sign up for these no code. If you look up no code or low code, no code, sometimes it's LCNC tools for agents. It will give you a list of those. I can't recommend too many of them. I use N8N. That's the only one I really use. Zapier I play with, but there are quite a few others out there. But if you do start playing with them, make sure that you do that. So, and then always have a human approval at the end. So that's really what I got. And I'm open to questions if anyone's got any.
Yeah, I have a question. One of the questions was, I guess, have you implemented a agent like towards Campbell or even your personal self that, I guess, an example of certain mistakes or things that it did wrong, examples of how it went rogue on your personal agent, I guess, or your own personal workflow, work-wise, or even just personal messaging that you have or anything like that?
Yeah, I've had agents go rogue, but it's only messed up me because I've never had it send things out, right? So that's why I always don't have it automate that last step, like send the email or this kind of. I wanted to present the information to me before I would have it generate an email. I think the agent that I have, even the one I have to go back through my emails, I don't have it send me an email. I just go back and check what the agentic output is for that, because I'm a little bit nervous giving access to my email, to tell you the truth, without me prompting it to send an email. Okay. But that said, there are workflows out there, companies depend on daily, that once they've proven workflows work, then they're like, okay, we've had the human in the loop. We know this works. We haven't seen any errors. Let's just let it do its thing. And then you've got to monitor that, though. Even if that happens, you need to be able to monitor that and make sure it continually does what it's supposed to.
And then I know you recommended N8N. Do you know, I guess, which LLM do you use for that? Because you can use multiple ChatGPT, Claude, or program the API for that. I didn't know which one is the best one to kind of work with certain different softwares that required an API.
I would use anyone that you feel comfortable with using. Truthfully, what I use on it is Olama on my local laptop. So I actually run that locally. I run N8N on my laptop using a local model called Olama. There's other ones out there that you can download from a place called Hugging Face. There are different models like Quen that runs locally on your laptop. The trouble with that is you need to have a pretty beefy laptop and you need to choose models. And it takes a little, there's so many models out there, it takes a little bit of discernment to understand which models do which and which are better. The bigger models are not going to run on a laptop. You need a full-blown production system for it, but there are some lightweight models, and that's what I use on my own personal device. I used to pay for API calls to, I want to say, Anthropic, because I was using Claude for a while. But my company doesn't pay for that, and my wife is starting to complain. So I quit. I quit buying that. I think I was spending $100 a month on API calls at that point. So that's when I tried to move to doing it on my own laptop.
I have a quick question as well. You kind of touched on it in a previous answer, how you said you didn't want your email sending out emails for you. On one of your previous slides, you had like the low code, no code toolkits, and I noticed one of the subtext for that said, easiest on-ramp connects 8,000 plus apps you already use. So my question kind of is, what sort of precautions or like pre-set up, I guess, things you should do to protect yourself when setting AI up with these other, with like, I guess, say your socials, other apps with your information on it? What sort of steps should you take to prevent any sort of security risk?
No, that makes perfect sense. So you probably don't want to trust your agent, right, with your social security stuff or things like that, right? But if you have a database of stuff that you want to get figured out, that's not company proprietary, right? You could trust it. Each of these companies has and there's a bunch of them out there, but each of these has I want to call it terms of use kind of thing that says whether or not they protect their data. And that's what I would go by, first of all, to make sure before you're sharing data with these things. And that said, there's a lot of companies out there, and you can Google what companies are using these tools that trust some of the stuff. So that I would do some Googling or, chat GPT to figure out some of those companies. But yeah, I use Anchor. It's very nice thing about it. It's very easy. It's got modules that are plug and play, right? So I could say, here's my email address to pull things from, and then here's other stuff like that. But I do have to give it my credentials, right? So I'm trusting it a little bit for these things. So don't violate company IT policy, please. If you're experimenting with these things, use your own personal email.
Thank you.
I have a question. I'm a student at Campbell University. I'm an intern here. How would you say is the best way to use and implement AI whenever you're learning like material to do homework and then to study?
Hey, good question. I know a lot of faculty here are anti-AI, but in the business department, they're pro-AI, right? If it's got the English department, it's kind of like, in the business department. I would say use the tools that your instructors recommend for the most part to get the job done with your stuff. But I personally, for my own productivity, I have a subscription and I love Notebook LM from Gemini or Google. I'm in the Google ecosystem for almost everything, so I use quite a bit of Notebook LM. I don't know if you know about that, but it's basically what they call it, a RAG, which is a system where you can create a database of documents. Retrieval augmented generation is what RAG stands for. So what that means is I can give Notebook LM a list of documents I've got, and that's my retrieval generation. And then the model's only going to query those documents I gave it, right? It's only going to give me an answer based on what I gave it. So I like Notebook LM. The other nice thing is I have to create a podcast, right, from the information there. And sometimes it creates pretty good stuff if you prompt it that way. Gemini is great for me, like I said, because I pay for it monthly. But any of them can be helpful. And there's tons of different templates out there students are using for, different ways to learn various things. At Campbell, we recommend Copilot Pro because we have the Copilot that you can log into. And if you're dealing with Campbell data, I have to use Copilot because I work in IT. So I have to use Copilot for any Campbell specific data. And so I do that as well. But the only reason I run anything on my laptop is because I don't want that going out into the cloud, and I'm using Campbell data. And I know that it's stuck on my laptop, right? And it's a Campbell laptop, and that data is not going anywhere else. So that's how I play around with agents on myself. I'm not paying for a lot of these other API calls and things like that. So
Makes sense. I appreciate it.
welcome.
David, you kind of a second ago, you were talking about Campbell, right? And the fact that you're on Microsoft and therefore you're probably using the Copilot Studio. But also, I would think that there's a lot of governance that goes on around that, right? So if your students are using, let's say, Copilot and they're trying to do some automation, the security mechanisms, the permissioning, the firewalls, all of those things, I think would take a pretty sophisticated IT stroke cybersecurity person to ensure that your company's data is not going out onto the public internet. So how do you control that? Because for us, we're also a Microsoft shop, but you mentioned Notebook LM, which tends to be more the Google space. How do you control the flow of information out and back so that we can do things productively internally without, exposing us to greater problems externally?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And so the reason I mention these tools is, and to give you the caveat is, there's the danger, right, of people going rogue, just like the agents, and using tools that, so having a good policy. Now we have a policy for faculty in some departments. The law school has an AI policy. We have an AI policy for staff. here on what we can use. We can only use Copilot, Copilot Studio. We do not have a policy for students or for faculty currently, because the faculty senate has to ratify something that has a AI use policy that's from the academic side of the house. So our staff policy dictates that you will not share any Campbell related data that has any PII or proprietary data with any LLM except using our Copilot, right, our license there. And, the ramifications if you get stuck by it, if you get caught not following those rules is, a reprimand from your supervisor and, possible termination for breaking those kind of things. But the fact that it's the Wild West out there, that's the danger with some of these tools. People might be experimenting with them. And since I'm supposed to be the AI IT, at least in-house AI expert, I play around with these things, right, on my own laptops. But I know enough to know the data I'm using is most of the reports I get from the internet. So it's publicly accessible data that I'm playing with for the most part. I'm not using my corporate data. I'm not using my student database. I'm not using my classroom data, things like that. In your environment, I would encourage people to not experiment with, sensitive data or whatever data you guys have in terms of your policy with agents, unless you can come up with your own, like I said, platform that is vetted, like Copilot Studio, and you're going to say, okay, these people have access to Copilot Studio, because it does cost more money to give people access to Copilot Studio, but not everyone needs it, right? But you might have certain management teams or certain groups that need access to that. So I think that's your best bet, because that keeps things within your tenant. And if it's within your tenant, the nice thing is it can reach out to those databases. So I can use Copilot on my own computer to analyze my emails and things like that. And that's one of the ways I get things into my agent. My agent calls Microsoft Copilot to pull the data, the main email summaries, and then it reports back to me, the past couple of weeks of stuff based on what it's getting from Copilot. But it's not within my Outlook is what it is. It's querying Outlook directly. So.
Yeah, well, actually, what you just mentioned is where my concern came, right? Because you mentioned policies, right? You can write down the best policies in the world. Someone has to actually A, read them, and then B, follow them. And I was trying to discern whether or not there are mechanisms technically that would prevent people from doing bad things. And I don't know if that's the case, because it is the Wild Wild West and it is so complicated that can you get a good enough IT security policy so that databases are protected? That I don't know. And it's probably beyond the scope of this particular call. But since you run it for Campbell, I thought I'd ask the question.
Yeah, there are ways to firewall API calls, like block things, in your firewall and things like that. But yeah, in terms of a policy here, we tend to be open because we can't, because we're an academic institution. So, but there are ways that people are doing that in the corporate world. I'm not privy. I've heard and seen a lot of those, but I'm not expert or privy to exactly how they're getting accomplished that. I wish I knew. It's a good thing to do some research on.
Yeah, just one other question, David, because you've mentioned some of these tools like Copilot or Notebook LM, maybe Claude Cowork, some of those. Those tools send, once you give them access to your, let's say, your laptop, it has access to your files, your emails, those sort of things. They seem to be much more powerful versus using something that you've got to do sort of the coding through Zapier or Make or anything else, N8N. What would be your opinion upon using something that is resident made for your environment versus customizing it through some of these other agents, other tools?
Think the other tools, it depends on your cost model, right? So these other tools that you're paying for, right? That's what you're subscribing to. You're talking about. They are more powerful. We'd like to be able to give Copilot or the full version of Microsoft Office Copilot for 365 to everybody, right? Because it can go through the emails and it can do Excel spreadsheets, create PowerPoints, all these kind of things. It's a huge productivity helper. We just don't have the budget to give it $30 a month, every month for every employee per year, right? So some of those decisions have to be made by management for those kind of things. And that's one of the reasons I kind of encourage people to want to experiment, to kind of roll their own little things using some of these experimental things without, like I said, getting too deep into corporate proprietary stuff like that. But if you got a team that can come up with a workflow that they know would work with an agent, then you can start having this conversation with the manager and saying, hey, we think we've got a workflow that could save us a lot of time and money per year. Would it be worth having a conversation, getting access to some of these, more expensive products like Copilot Studio or the ones to, engineer on that platform. So
Thank
that'd
you.
Be my advice. Yeah.
Roger that. Thanks.
Any other questions? Well, I know that was a lot of information that I threw at you guys. If you've never thought about agents or talked about agents or really experimented with agents, it's kind of the latest thing. I don't even want to get into what's called OpenClaw or Claw, which Claw is the agent that runs on your computer and takes over your computer. Some people are using that. It will actually click clicks and do things and take over your access. And the reason they call it Claw is because it claws into your operating system to take control of things. Now, it's another powerful agentic tool. I don't recommend you experimenting with it, but if you hear about it, that's what it's about. Some people are playing with that kind of tool. But those are mostly for people that, are very experienced messing with agents and doing those kind of things. You get into trouble really quick. I personally do not use it. I do not believe it's safe. I have experimented with it, I should say, on my own experimental box at my house, but I would never use that at work. Just from that until this stuff is settled. So be discerning. We're all as good Christian people. I hope that discernment is a big part of at least our faith and our daily walk. And I think when you are using AI tools, using discernment is a huge thing to keep in mind as well.
Thank you so much, David, and thank you for everybody for participating. Now, thank you. You gave me a lot of information. Yeah, I can't wait to play with the N-A-N. I haven't played with that one, and also Llama. There's a lot of agents out there, or LLMs. So I appreciate it. Thank you for everybody for joining us. Thank you, David, again.
You're welcome. You guys have a blessed week.
You too.